You're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salailo Makwidiri, and in a bit we'll be delving into a pressing issue that continues to challenge local governance in South Africa. According to Auditor General's recent report, a troubling trend persists with only 34 out of 257 municipalities achieving clean audits. This is for the 2022-2023 financial year, and this represents a significant concern regarding transparency, accountability, and the overall performance of local governments across the country. And to help us unpack these findings and explore the implications for our communities, we are joined by Julius, Kleynhans, the head of social innovation at OUTA, the organization undoing tax abuse, and they are known for their work in advocating for transparency and accountability within the public sector. Julius, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thanks, Adelo. It's always a pleasure.
I think let's start by maybe helping our listeners understand some of the key takeaways from this Auditor General's 2022-2023 financial year report on municipal audits. It looks like it's a mess. It looks like a lot is not in place, and it looks like we'll be struggling for a very long time when it comes to getting our municipalities in order, which are the direct link between government and the people on the ground.
Yeah, I think what makes it even worse is this is where we live and stay, and our kids go to school, and where we work. So it's really critical for this area of government to work well. Firstly, there's no ideology in a municipality. It's got a clear mandate, and that is to provide basic services and provide that sustainably. And that's not the case anymore. Even in our metros, we see things falling apart. In the city of Johannesburg, there's not even sufficient water for people. So it's really concerning. And I think the decline in the audit outcomes, you can clearly see that there's severe systemic failures within our municipalities. And I think that goes hand in hand with very, very weak political oversight, as well as a lack of consequence management. And I cannot see it changing as we see that politics are becoming more irresponsible by the day. We see political coalitions changing quite often, and we don't necessarily believe or see that flows down to benefit communities. Rather, we see that there's kind of power struggles, and I think it's quite evident in the audit outcomes that municipalities are run very inefficiently. The finances are not intact. In fact, a lot of the municipalities, the Auditor General cannot even use their financial statements. That's how bad it is. But there's just no accountability. There's no consequence management whatsoever.
I want us to touch a bit on the impact of this, poor audit and its outcomes. The report clearly highlights that there are only about 34 municipalities that have achieved clean audits. What are the potential impacts of these poor audit outcomes on local communities and specifically service delivery? You spoke about the rot in our municipalities. Some instances we don't even have water. Schools are in a mess. The roads are not being tarred correctly. Infrastructure is crumbling. And I'm pretty sure this can be clearly linked with the poor audit outcomes that we are seeing right now.
100%. I think what's quite evident in the audit outcomes is poor financial management. So if you don't allocate the right funds and generate the correct revenues, you cannot manage a municipality. You cannot maintain infrastructure. But what makes it worse is that we see that the leadership within municipalities don't even know what their assets are. It's so poor record keeping and project planning for future infrastructure. And what goes hand in hand with that is the lack of spending on infrastructure. So if you don't have any plan or vision in your municipality and the ability to execute and do that efficiently, there's no real future. And we've seen 3 billion rand being returned to Treasury on money that wasn't spent on new infrastructure development. And I think if you just look at communities, how many are there that's still sitting without basic access to water, and electricity. We're seeing the debt ratio within municipality increasing, and we see also that there's a severe lack of proper controls in place in our municipalities. I think so. Yeah, you can see infrastructure like roads deteriorating every year. We see water access becoming more unsustainable, and people, the listeners and viewers, can see that. Electricity supply. Yes, Eskom had a big hand in load shedding. However, this load sharing and other infrastructure breakdowns is really because of a lack of proper maintenance and management from our municipalities. And I think it's got to such a point now, and this hasn't happened overnight. So it has reached a point where we need to replace some of the infrastructure instead of just refurbishing it. And that really puts us in a very peculiar position when it comes to finances. I think one of the biggest elements that the auditor has pointed out, well, there's two things really. The one thing is 42% of unfunded budgets being passed by municipal councils. So these are councillors and political abilities that don't necessarily have the understanding or skill sets on how finances work, I suppose, because they just vote whatever the whip says they have to vote for, instead of applying their minds on whether a municipality can generate the revenue and allocate the funds. And this is aligned with budgets. So if a municipality says that we need to spend X amount of money on water infrastructure this year, and they vote that they are going to do that, but they don't have the resources to do that, they're setting themselves up for failure, and this is illegal. Then there's just the other element, is the project management ability. We see that the successful municipalities with better audit outcomes have professional people who can design projects, cost it accurately and competitively, and they can deliver on time, and people get access to those resources. And I think a majority of municipalities really are terrible in project management, and we see so many delays, so many bad designs, and sadly, communities don't get access to services that they've been promised.
The report outlines the fact that many of these municipalities are stuck in a cycle of unqualified opinions. In literal terms, what does this mean, and what do you think are the core reasons behind this persistent issue?
Look, that's a very good question, because we saw the city of Johannesburg boasting and celebrating that they got an unqualified audit of findings. It is really not something to celebrate. Basically, they've got significant issues. One of the worst is their performance management. The city only delivered on 64% of its targets. That's not something you celebrate. In fact, in a normal business, that's something you get fired over.
Exactly.
So it's a very good question. Basically, what the Auditor General says is, when it comes to unqualified with findings, they don't have accurate financial statements. So they have submitted it on time, but the Auditor General says, listen, what you're saying you're generating in revenue and what you're saying you are spending does not make sense, so your financials are inaccurate. And in a normal business, you would probably be in business rescue now or close your doors. So yeah, that's not a good thing at all. And then you get your material irregularities and those kind of things that add to this shenanigans. So basically, when it comes to the 90 qualified municipal audits that's shown in the municipalities, they struggle to account for revenues. They're not sure who owes their money. They struggle to account for expenditures and infrastructure, so they don't even know what assets they have. And basically, they just don't have any controls to tell them what their assets are and where they need to allocate funds to develop the future. So, and then you obviously also get your disclaimers and things like that. And you get municipalities that just don't submit financials at all. But when it comes to disclaimers, I think the municipality cannot account for performance. They cannot account for their financials. It's just a mess, and
Mm.
it's just sad that people are not being locked up. If we are the shareholders of our municipalities, if it was a business, we would have seen directors in jail by now.
And you're referencing that if these municipalities were businesses, they would probably have a lot of people behind bars or fired. But most importantly, there would be under business rescue of some kind. Well, in the case of municipalities, the report is calling for an increased support from national and provincial governments. In your view, what kind of support is needed, and how can it be effectively implemented to drive improvement in these ailing municipalities?
Yeah, look, I think we need to just look at the trend. Every year this is said. We need proper intervention. Municipalities have failed because of a lack of oversight. Provincial treasury has to receive reports from these municipalities on a monthly basis. National government sees these reports on a monthly and quarterly basis. So there's no real value, I believe, in saying that we need to work more together and stuff like that. I think we need to be frank. The root cause of the problem is the lack of political will and consequence management. And our municipalities are not professionalized. So uh, if we had to fix our municipalities, I would suggest we need to go on a zero-based budget approach. So you need to see how much revenue is in the municipality, what are the basic services that need to be rendered, and what the cost would be. And you need to cut the fat to ensure that you've
Mm,
got the right people who can get the job done. Because this is not an ideological thing or something where the unions must intervene. This is you and I and everyone else
mm,
that suffer the consequences of bad management. And just lastly, if your municipalities are literally the foundation of an economy. If your electricity doesn't work, if you don't have refuse removal, if you don't have roads to drive on, if you don't have access to water, you cannot do business. So you cannot create jobs. And I think that's how significant this is, and we need to be really serious about it. We need to stop with the politics in local government. It needs to be run like a non-profit company and serve the people well.
mm. And there seems to be, I don't know if we can consider it a silver lining to all of this. The fact that you have 34 municipalities that have achieved clean audits. How what can we highlight from the ones that are getting it right? Well, what are some of the practices have they implemented or have adopted that can be copied and pasted by the other municipalities that are getting it all wrong?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing is you must see where it is. It's in the Western Cape. I think more than 20 of these municipalities are there. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get into politics and ideology, but the one thing that the Western Cape government's doing well is they apply good oversight. They know that if they supply sustainable services to communities, that those communities will most likely vote for them, and that businesses will be able to foster good economic growth to sustain the financial future of that municipality. So they've got the basics right. They do proper financial management. They've got highly qualified people in management positions. Um, it's not mates, it's not things like that. And I think they run the municipalities cost effectively. Where we see in other municipalities, to plug a pothole costs 1,200 rand, but in these efficient municipalities, 500 rand. So who's benefiting out of that at the expense of the ratepayer and the marginalized communities? So I think it's just basic business practices. Get the right leadership in place. Do sound financial management. Consequence management is key. If people are not performing, they shouldn't be there because it's at the expense of the people. And I think good communication, because weak municipalities, you never hear anything about them unless a mayor cuts a ribbon at some kind of new thing. When these other municipalities that are performing well, there's consistent feedback. In fact, some of them have 5 to 10 year plans and telling you that in 3 or 6 years from now, we've allocated 4 billion rand to upgrade the water because we see more businesses are leaving bad performing municipalities are moving to us. So we need to make sure we can cater for them. But guess what? We are getting more money to serve you better.
Just last but not least, public engagement. How can ordinary citizens get involved in holding municipalities accountable, and advocate for better governance? How can the ordinary men and women on the ground act to this very, very bad show to their own municipality?
Very good question. I think we are partially to blame, and just bear with me. Um, so, in our democracy, in the constitution and local government legislation, it says that civil society residents need to be part of the business of local government. We need to be part of the decisions, not just complain. So we have to become more organized. We have to actively participate in council sessions, in the IDP process, which is basically where you tell the municipalities how to spend your money, and in the budget processes. But more than that is we need to create permanent oversight. We have to create structures that sit in council meetings and ensure that the budgets are executed, that the performance management occurs, and that we are served well. We are the shareholders of our municipalities, and that's our duty. We have to start participating. So for those who want to get involved and don't know how, maybe if folks can maybe go to can.org.za. It's can.org.za. There's quite a couple of tools that we try and help and enable and empower communities to become more effective. But no doubt, the most important aspect is that we need to take notes of what's happening around us. And come 2026, we need to vote very decisively to define our own futures in local government. There's a big difference between local and national government. And as I said, a municipality should not have any ideological connotation. It's about basic service provision. And that's where we've got a bigger role to play. But it doesn't stop and start at voting. We need to take a more active role in becoming part of our communities.
All right, there you have it. Julius Kleynhans, Executive Manager at the Local Government Division at OUTA. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
You too. That was a really, really insightful conversation there with Julius. And I think what's very, very important, it's your involvement. You're the one that's directly impacted by this very, very poor showing by local municipalities. And I think the best way to go about it is in the next local government elections in 2026. That's where you need to make your voice heard the most. And as you heard from Julius, that's not the only avenue you can use. There are, organizations like OUTA themselves can go on to their website, and they have plenty of resources to make sure that you have a voice and you can hold your municipality accountable. I mean, 34 out of 257, and only 20 of that 34 is in guess what, the Western Cape, where we govern things work. Is that the tagline, their motto? Looks like it, but yeah, 2026, we all need to get involved. And I think, municipalities need to feel the pinch of, poor governance. I mean, it's really awful. 34 out of 257. And this is, affecting you and I. This is basic service delivery. This is water. This is roads, making sure the roads are tarred, making sure electricity infrastructure is in place, making sure that, the security and your police stations and your local clinics are working. So, I think very, very important. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with this edition of News and Views right after this short break.